guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm back with another video, and this video is another recap of a movie I watched on Lifetime, of course, and this is Disappearance in Yellowstone. Yes, Yellowstone Park, I believe. I think so. Yeah, this is not based on a true story, but there is an actual true story about two teens that went missing. So this mother, she goes by the name of Jessica, and her daughter Michelle. So basically they just traveling through, coming from California, and they basically had like a lot of, I won't say baggage as in luggage, whatever. And the daughter, she's kind of like upset with the fact that they're leaving California from where she's from. I don't know how long they were staying there or whatever. But yeah, they're driving through, and to her understanding, Michelle's understanding, she's not on the best terms with her mom because her mama just up and left them to go on the road. So she basically left behind her father, her friends, and that's basically all she cares about at this moment is her friends and her dad. But she don't know that her dad was abusive and used to beat on her mother. She didn't know that part, but we'll get to that later. But yeah, so her mother is basically just looking out for her best interest and just trying to make sure she's safe and unharmed. So they're driving through, I think it's what Montana. It came up when the police, when they found it. It was Montana. They're driving through, and they end up stopping at this diner because as they drive, all you see that the beautiful green trees, and it's just like, it's beautiful. You will want to go there too. So they end up stopping at this diner called Bear Bite Lodge. Henceforth, there might be bears. Yeah. So they stop at this diner. Hold on. Yeah. So they stop at this diner called Bear Bite Lodge. Jessica sends her daughter Michelle to go in to get them something to eat because Michelle was complaining of being hungry or whatever. So they stop. She goes in to order their food, so they get a sandwich and I guess some coffee or whatever. And after she orders the food, she pays for it. The waitress tells her to go sit down in the booth, and as she sits down, there's this guy dressed in his park ranger uniform, and she's basically not paying him no mind. She's basically watching what's on the news, and they're talking about how these women went missing in the park. So he basically interjects himself into what she was watching on the TV, talking about like, you can't be too sure about the people in your surroundings. And she's like, yeah, okay, whatever. I'm just basically, in her head, she's like, I'm just basically waiting on my food. I want my food so I can go. And he just starts talking to her. Then she eventually turns around and she engages with a conversation with him as well. And her mother's watching through the car in the window, and she can see like, this girl, like every parent, like, listen, I want to tell you here to do one thing and you start doing something else, like kids. So after that, eventually she gets his name, and they try to love it, and eventually she gets her food and they leave. But after they leave, he's still watching the window, putting on his uniform or whatever, and I guess he decides to leave as well. But the mom doesn't know that. So they're driving down through one of these back roads, and eventually the car breaks down. So the daughter, she's still living, and she feel like her mother is doing so much harm to her. She catches attitude and locks herself in the car. So her mother gets out to check it to make sure to see if anything else was doing. As she's doing so, she ends up burning her hand. So then after that, she pulls out the map and she looks out to see where she's at, to see how far the next service station is, which she does find it. So eventually, her daughter's locked in the car at the time. Her daughter's 17, so she's kind of, I would say, she can handle herself, but then again, it's like she's still a child, so it's like those type of situations. But yeah, so she locks herself in the car, so her mama's not thinking nothing of it. And plus, they didn't have no cell signal, so basically, your mama had to get out and truck it because the daughter didn't want to go with her. So it's like, okay, you do you. I mean, I'm gonna go get help. So her mama eventually she walks about probably like 2 miles from where they at in the park to the service station. Yeah, she walks about I think 2 miles. She gets to the service station. She gets to the mechanic and tells her like, listen, my car broke down in the park, and I'm gonna need your help. Mind if we take your truck to go back? And he was like, yeah, sure. He stopped what he's doing. They get in the car and they go back. As they're going back into the park from the other side, they spot this green pickup Jeep, whatever. And she was like, wow, that's crazy. This is the only car I've seen since we've been stuck here. Mind you, they were stuck. And her mom was gone for about an hour. So, yeah, that's a long walk from the park into the service station. So she gets back with the guy. The mechanic's name is Grant. So she gets there, and then she notices her car on the passenger side is open. She's like, Michelle. She starts calling her name, thinking maybe she probably went out to use the bathroom, whatever. And they don't see nothing. So eventually, Jessica's becoming very frantic, and Grant was able to call the police in through his CB walkie-talkie thing, and then 5 minutes later, the police come, and it's one of Grant's friends that he's not like too fond of. So he basically pulls up and was like, "Listen, what's going on here?" And she was like, and at first, Jessica was kind of upset because Grant called them. Like, why would you call them? Because not nobody knowing about her situation, she wasn't trying to bring heat to her. So, eventually, the cop was like, where's your daughter? And she was like, she's fine. She probably just went to the next visitor station, whatever. She said she got pulled over. She, picked up by the park ranger. And maybe he dropped her off to the next station. So, yeah. Eventually, the cop was like, it sounds iffy. So, he ended up running Jessica's license plate and come to find out, she's been wanted for kidnapping. Basically, her ex-husband called the cops and said that she kidnapped the daughter, basically. So, now that they wanted a warrant for her arrest. So, the cop tries to take her in, handcuffs her into the car. And then as she leaves, Grant started looking around at her car and like, He goes over to the passenger side. He's seen that there's some drag marks. And then he finds the girl's AirPod on the ground. Like, that's suspicious. And then he's thinking, oh, wow, she was right. She was right. Her daughter was taken. So eventually Grant gets into his car and he catches up to the police and tries to catch up to the police, but doing so, there's a deer in the road, so the cop had to swerve off the road, and he ended up hitting into this big rock. But of course, the cop is going to think that Grant did it because, they have kind of like a grudge against each other, whatever. So after that, Jessica gets free, and they go into Grant's car, and they travel up into the visiting center. So they go in, there's some other park rangers there, and they was like, listen, have you seen this girl? The lady was like, no. And then they started describing the other park ranger, and the lady was like, no, he's over there. And then the mom, she in go mode, she was like, what are you doing with that? Oh, wrong person. She was on go. And he was like, well, maybe it's somebody else. Then they leave. As they're about to get into Grant's truck, the police came. So it's like, dang, they kind of wanted for, the hit and run situation, even though it wasn't their fault. So he grabs his emergency pack bag out of his car, and then they head into the woods. So that means the visiting center isn't that far from the park where they was at in the beginning. Like, they're on the other side. So that park is humongous. So I guess you could get in through 2 exits from the back side, the east side and the west side. So they probably was on the east side, and where her car was on the west side. So they're now on the east side of the park. So they go into the park, and then the cops start looking around like, okay, well, where could have they gone? Couldn't have gone far. The car is there. So they're off into the woods, and they're talking about, and then Jessica ends up spraining her foot. And he checks it out. It was just a little sprain. And eventually she was thinking back like, well, what could happen? So now they was thinking, Jessica thought to retrack her steps. It's like, maybe the guy wasn't really a park ranger. He basically wore that so he can lure her. And probably other women to get them to go with him. Because, a park ranger you think is going to be help. But the end is kind of danger. So they decided to go back to the diner where she first met the guy at and stake it out. He didn't come in that late that night. The next morning he showed up. So doing so, Grant and Jessica had this little heated moment. How you fall in love with her and like that. But whatever. I digress. So the next morning they see Grant at the diner. So Jessica goes in. She takes a knife out of Grant's bag. And she goes up to the diner and was like, listen, where is she? Where is she? And then at that same time, the cops come back into the store like, oh my God. So Jessica threatened the guy. His name is Nolan. And she was like, listen, you're going to go outside with me slowly and act like nothing's going on. He does so. Eventually, they get into his Jeep. And she was like, where's my daughter? He was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I took her to the bus stop. How can you take her to the bus stop if there's no cell service nowhere? And when she left her phone and her AirPods back in the car inside the woods. So now Nolan and Jessica are together driving in the car. And Jessica's keeping track with Grant through the walkie-talkies that he provided through his emergency bag of stuff. And, Nolan catched on. So Jessica was like, well, take me to the bus station. And then she told that to Grant. So they didn't know that to meet up at the bus station, Greyhound. So Nolan was like, yeah, little do you know, I got you. So Nolan ends up driving to some recycling depot, and Grant and his friend Wally, because Wally got him to get a ride. So Grant and Wally is at the bus station, and they're like, where are you? She was like, I'm at some abandoned building or whatever. So then Wally told Grant where it was at. So they went over there. Doing so, they see Grant's car. They both get out the car. And at that same time, when they got to the depot before, Jessica and Nolan got out of the car. And they started tussling with each other. Eventually, she tried to get away, but he knocked her out and basically tied her up in the back of his trunk. So when Grant and Wally got there, they just see a car there. They don't see nothing else. But they see Jessica's walkie-talkie and knife on the ground. So Wally and Grant, they're looking around. The next thing they start hearing gunshots. Mind you, Nolan went into some part of the woods where he can see them, but they can't see him. And he starts shooting. Wally got shot. Grant got shot. But Wally was basically dead at the scene. Grant got shot in his shoulder. Eventually, the cops showed up to where they were at. And we heard about the killing of them. Well, the shot of them. And he was like, well, that makes no sense. Well, how can you be shot, but where's Jessica? And it's like, dang, it's starting to make sense. Maybe that lady was telling the truth. So eventually they called the ambulance. Wally went to the morgue. Grant went to the emergency room. And the cop was, I forgot what his name was, but whatever, the cop, he was like, Grant was like, it's time for you to go ahead and do your job. So then after that, once he left to go to the emergency room, the cop was like, I'm going to need backup. And then they're going to put out a bolo to find both the mom and the daughter. After that, Nolan took her and tied up someplace in a shed in the woods. Because basically, I'll get to that after. So he tied up in the shed in the woods. Meanwhile, Michelle, she's tied up somewhere at his house in the woods. So he has like a shed, and then he also has like uh um a cabin in the woods. So he has two different places because he knows it like the back of his hand. So Michelle's still tied up in the woods. Jessica's tied up in this warehouse shed, and he was like, "Listen, I'm gonna let you go if you can answer me these right questions. Mind you, if you don't, I will slowly skin your daughter and kill her to death." So he was like, "If you answer this right, I'll let you go." She basically didn't say nothing to him. He went off. She said something at one point, and then he was like, "All right, I got it. Now I'm about to go kill her." So he leaves. Jessica eventually gets herself free, and then she finds a flashlight and she goes searching through the woods to help find her daughter. So she's walking through the woods. Meanwhile, Nolan is trying to set up a bear trap so he can trap her. He didn't get that part, whatever. So he goes back to the house where Michelle's at. Jessica, she gets to walking in the woods and she hits a rock on the ground. And she was this close, literally, see how small my hand is? That close from a bear trap. Yes, so she was like, by the grace of God, she's lucky for that. So eventually, she was able to unhinge the bear trap and take it along with her. And she found out where he was staying in the woods. So she set it up, and she started calling his name. And then Michelle started calling her mom's name. So eventually, Nolan went outside and with his shotgun, and he was like, "Listen, Jessica, I know you're out here. Where you at?" So she's standing a few feet away from his house behind this big old tree. And she threw something so that way he can walk towards with it. He did walk. But he didn't see her because the way she crouched down, like you wouldn't think nobody was there. So he kept walking and walking with his shotgun. Next thing you know, his foot got trapped in the bear trap. I was like, woo! Yes, so after that, he's there laying on the ground or whatever. She goes in to free her daughter. Yeah, the mama's a beast for it, and so was her daughter. But come to find out, the daughter, they both got, I left that part out. They both got tranquilized with this needle. So Michelle, she basically played it off so that way she could still survive. I left out that one key detail just earlier. So yeah, her mother was able to get her free, and they're about to leave and find somewhere else to walk to. Doing so, tell me why a big grizzly bear come out. It's like a few inches away from the guy Nolan, and his foot's in the bear trap, so he barely could do anything. So he was like, he was mad. Next thing you know, the daggone bear knocked him out, and he's laying on a pile of logs. It was like, ooh, let's get out of here before that bear tried to attack us. Eventually, they got out safely. They met up with Grant. His shoulder was okay. Basically, I'm not sure where they traveled to next. I don't know if they're going to stay there in that town or whatever. But Michelle and Jessica and Grant were okay. Jessica finally told Michelle what was really going on between her and her father. And I guess they let everything go, and she's good. So Michelle got back her cell phone privileges and her internet privileges to talk to her friends. And I guess Grant and Jessica had this budding relationship now. We don't know what's going to happen from there on. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the recap. Long story short, Nolan. Oh, I also have another part. Nolan basically, he grew up out there. So he knew the area like the back of his hand. In the beginning, I was talking about his sister. I left that part out. She basically went missing one night. Come to find out, she was killed by Nolan's father. Basically, Nolan was what you call a generational killer. So basically, his father was doing that for 30 years. So that's how Grant's sister, she died by the hands of his father. So basically, their cycle basically continued with the son of kidnapping vulnerable and women who think nobody will miss them, dressed up as a park ranger, so they'll think it's help. And yeah, it was sad, but stuff like this do happen on a daily basis. So you gotta be careful who you trust and who you decide to let your guard down to, because just when you think about it, you might be in a situation that you can't get out of. So be careful, be mindful, and don't be so gullible and naive. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this recap. You can catch this on the Lifetime movie app, I believe, and probably on Lifetime. So give me a like, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and I will see y'all in the next one. Bye.